Welcome to Detectives Crime Stories, where we delve into the darkest corners of human nature. Today's episode unravels a tale of wife swap goes wrong, ends in obsession, and vicious killing. In the quiet suburban town of Millbrook, nestled in the heart of Connecticut, life moved at a leisurely pace. Picket fences lined well-manicured lawns, and neighbors greeted each other with warm smiles. It was the kind of place where people felt safe leaving their doors unlocked at night. But beneath this veneer of tranquility, a storm was brewing, one that would shatter the peace of Millbrook forever. The center of this storm were two couples, the Harpers and the Caldwell. To the outside world, they epitomized the American dream. Both families lived in beautiful colonial-style homes just 3 blocks apart on Maple Street. Their children attended the same schools, and they often crossed paths at community events. But behind closed doors, each couple harbored their own secrets and desires. The Harpers, Michael and Catherine, had been married for 15 years. Michael, 42, was a successful investment banker with a corner office in Hartford. He was known for his sharp mind and even sharper suits. Catherine, 38, was a stay-at-home mom who poured her energy into raising their 2 children, Emma, 12, and Ethan, 9. She was active in the PTA and known for her Pinterest-perfect home decor. The Caldwells, James and Rebecca, had been together for 17 years. James, 45, owned a popular local brewery and was beloved in the community for his jovial nature and generous spirit. Rebecca, 40, was a high school English teacher, known for her passion for literature and her ability to inspire her students. They had one son, Oliver, who was 14. On the surface, both marriages seemed picture-perfect. But appearances can be deceiving. Michael and Catherine's relationship had grown cold over the years, with Michael's long work hours and Catherine's focus on the children creating a chasm between them. James and Rebecca, while still affectionate, had fallen into a routine that left both feeling unfulfilled. It was Rebecca who first floated the idea of a wife swap during a neighborhood barbecue. The suggestion was made in jest, after a few glasses of wine had loosened inhibitions. To everyone's surprise, the idea didn't die with the setting sun. Instead, it took root, growing in the fertile soil of curiosity and dissatisfaction. What started as a joke soon became a serious discussion. The couples met several times over the course of a month, setting ground rules and boundaries. They agreed to a 2-week experiment, after which they would return to their normal lives. Children would stay with their respective fathers to minimize disruption. On a crisp Saturday morning in October, Catherine packed a suitcase and walked the 3 blocks to the Caldwell residence. Rebecca did the same, moving into the Harper home. The neighborhood buzzed with gossip. The couples maintained that it was all in good fun, a way to spice up their marriages and gain a new perspective. For the first few days, the experiment seemed to be going well. Catherine enjoyed James's laid-back attitude and his willingness to help around the house. Rebecca appreciated Michael's ambition and the intellectual conversations they shared. It was a novelty for all involved, break from the monotony of their usual routines. But as the days wore on, things began to change. Catherine found herself drawn to James in a way she hadn't anticipated. His easy laughter and zest for life awakened something in her that had long been dormant. She began to imagine a life with him, one filled with passion and adventure. Rebecca, on the other hand, found herself increasingly uncomfortable in the Harper home. Michael's workaholic tendencies and rigid expectations grated on her nerves. She missed the warmth and companionship she shared with James, and she worried about the effect this experiment might be having on their son, Oliver. As the 2-week mark approached, tensions were running high. Catherine had become obsessed with the idea of a future with James. She began to plan ways to extend the experiment, to make the swap permanent. Rebecca, meanwhile, was counting down the days until she could return home. The night before the swap was set to end, Catherine made a desperate move. She invited James out to dinner, intent on confessing her feelings and convincing him to leave Rebecca. James, oblivious to Catherine's intentions, agreed to the dinner, thinking it would be a nice way to conclude their time together. They met at La Belle Époque, an upscale French restaurant in the next town over. Catherine had dressed carefully, wearing a black cocktail dress that hugged her curves. James, ever casual, arrived in jeans and a button-down shirt. As they sat down to dinner, Catherine's heart raced. She ordered a bottle of expensive champagne, determined to make the night memorable. Over candlelight, Catherine poured out her heart to James. She told him how alive she felt in his presence, how she believed they were meant to be together. James listened with growing horror, realizing the depth of Catherine's feelings and the magnitude of the mistake they had made with this experiment. Gently but firmly, James explained that while he had enjoyed their time together, his heart belonged to Rebecca. He loved his wife and had no intention of leaving her. Catherine's world shattered. The rejection, combined with the champagne, sent her into a spiral of anger and despair. As they left the restaurant, Catherine made one last frantic attempt to change James's mind. In the parking lot, she grabbed him and tried to kiss him. James pushed her away, his voice raised as he told her to stop. Few patrons leaving the restaurant witnessed the scene, watching uncomfortably as Catherine broke down in tears. James walked away, shaken. Catherine drove home in a daze, her mind racing with thoughts of revenge and despair. She couldn't bear the thought of losing James, of returning to her old life with Michael. In her distorted mental state, she began to formulate a plan. The next morning, as Rebecca prepared to return home, Catherine put her plan into action. She invited Rebecca over to the Harper house, ostensibly to help her pack. Rebecca, eager to smooth over any awkwardness and return to normalcy, agreed. When Rebecca arrived, Catherine was waiting. The house was eerily quiet, children having left for school earlier. Catherine invited Rebecca up to the master bedroom, claiming she needed help choosing which clothes to pack. As Rebecca entered the room, Catherine closed the door behind them. Before Rebecca could react, Catherine attacked. The struggle was brief but violent. Catherine, fueled by jealousy and desperation, overpowered Rebecca. Using a decorative crystal paperweight from Michael's desk, she struck Rebecca repeatedly. The attack was as vicious as it was unexpected. Rebecca, caught completely off guard, had little chance to defend herself. Within minutes, she lay motionless on the bedroom floor, blood pooling around her head. As the reality of what she had done sank in, Catherine began to panic. She paced the room, running her hands through her hair, leaving streaks of Rebecca's blood. Her mind raced, trying to figure out how to cover up her crime. In a frenzy, Catherine decided to stage the scene as a burglary gone wrong. She ransacked the bedroom, pulling drawers out and scattering clothes. She took Rebecca's jewelry and her own, stuffing them into a bag. Then, using gloves she found in the garage, she wiped down surfaces, trying to erase any trace of her presence. With shaking hands, Catherine changed out of her blood-stained clothes, putting them and the gloves into a garbage bag. She took one last look at Rebecca's body, a wave of nausea washing over her as she realized the finality of her actions. Catherine slipped out of the house, careful to avoid being seen by neighbors. She drove to a nearby shopping center, where she disposed of the bag containing her clothes in a dumpster behind a fast food restaurant. Then she went home, showered, and waited. It was Michael who discovered Rebecca's body when he returned home from work that evening. His scream of horror echoed through the quiet neighborhood. Within minutes, Maple Street was awash in flashing police lights. Detective Lisa Cortez, a 15-year veteran of the Millbrook Police Department, took charge of the investigation. At 40, Cortez was known for her sharp instincts and unwavering dedication to justice. As she surveyed the crime scene, she knew this case would shake the community to its core. The initial evidence seemed to support the theory of a burglary gone wrong. The ransacked room, the missing jewelry, all pointed to a break-in. But something didn't sit right with Detective Cortez. The violence of the attack suggested a crime of passion, not a random act by a burglar. As Cortez and her team began to dig deeper, inconsistencies in the evidence began to emerge. There were no signs of forced entry. The neighborhood had not reported any suspicious activity. And most tellingly, nothing else in the house had been disturbed. The investigation quickly focused on those closest to Rebecca. James Caldwell was devastated by his wife's death. He cooperated fully with the police, providing a detailed account of his whereabouts and willingly submitting to questioning. His alibi was solid. He had been at the brewery all day, confirmed by multiple employees. Michael Harper was also questioned extensively. He too had a solid alibi, having been at his office in Hartford at the time of the murder. Colleagues confirmed he had been in meetings all afternoon. It was when the police began to look into Catherine Harper that things took a turn. Her behavior in the days following the murder was erratic. She seemed overly eager to help with the investigation, volunteering information before being asked. Her account of her movements on the day of the murder was vague and inconsistent. Detective Cortez's suspicions were further aroused when she learned about the wife swap experiment. Interviews with neighbors revealed the gossip that had been swirling around the two couples. Some spoke of tensions between Catherine and Rebecca in the days leading up to the murder. A breakthrough came when a waiter from La Belle Epoque came forward. He had recognized Catherine's picture in the local news coverage of the murder. He recounted the dinner Catherine had shared with James the night before Rebecca's death, describing Catherine's apparent distress and the scene he had witnessed in the parking lot. Armed with this new information, Detective Cortez brought Catherine in for another round of questioning. Under the detective's relentless interrogation, Catherine's carefully constructed facade began to crumble. Her case changed multiple times as Cortez pointed out inconsistencies, presented new evidence. Finally, after hours of questioning, Catherine broke down. Through tears, she confessed to the murder, pouring out the whole sordid tale. She spoke of her growing obsession with James, her desperation to keep him, and the moment of blind rage that had led her to attack Rebecca. The confession sent shockwaves through Millbrook. The idyllic facade of suburban life had been shattered, revealing the dark currents that ran beneath the surface. Communities struggled to reconcile the Catherine they thought they knew, the devoted mother and perfect housewife, with the woman capable of such a brutal act. Catherine Harper was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. As she was led away in handcuffs, her vacant eyes and disheveled appearance were a far cry from the polished woman who had embarked on a harmless experiment just weeks before. The trial that followed was a media sensation. News vans lined Maple Street, and reporters camped out in front of both the Harper and Caldwell homes. The sordid details of the wife swap and the tragic consequences that followed were splashed across headlines nationwide. In the courtroom, Catherine sat motionless as the prosecution laid out their case. They painted a picture of a woman driven to extremes by obsession and jealousy. The defense tried to argue temporary insanity, claiming that the stress of the wife swap experiment had pushed Catherine over the edge. The premeditated nature of the crime, evidenced by Catherine's attempts to cover her tracks, undermined this defense. James Caldwell took the stand, his testimony a heartbreaking account of a joke gone horribly wrong. He spoke of his love for Rebecca, his regret over agreeing to the wife swap, and the guilt he felt for his unwitting role in the events that led to her death. Michael Harper's testimony was equally devastating. He spoke of the gradual deterioration of his marriage to Catherine, his workaholic tendencies that had pushed her away, and his shock at discovering the depths of her deception. As he spoke, couldn't bring himself to look at Catherine, the woman he had once vowed to love, better or worse. The most damning testimony came from the forensic evidence. DNA analysis showed Rebecca's blood on the clothes Catherine had discarded. Surveillance footage from the shopping center placed Catherine at the scene where she had disposed of the evidence. Every attempt she had made to cover her tracks only served to further incriminate her. After a 3-week trial, the jury took less than 6 hours to reach a verdict. Catherine Harper was found guilty of first-degree murder. As the verdict was read, she showed no emotion, face a mask of resigned acceptance. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The aftermath of the trial left the community of Millbrook reeling. The Harper children, Emma and Ethan, were left to grapple with the loss of their mother to prison and the knowledge of her terrible crime. They went to live with Michael's sister in another state, away from the whispers and stares of their hometown. James Caldwell and his son Oliver struggled to rebuild their lives without Rebecca. The brewery that had once been James's pride and joy now felt empty without Rebecca's support and encouragement. Oliver, once a bright and outgoing teenager, became withdrawn, struggling with the trauma of his mother's violent death. Michael Harper, his world shattered, threw himself into his work with even greater intensity. The house on Maple Street, once a home filled with laughter and life, stood empty, a silent testament to the tragedy that had unfolded within its walls. The ripples of Catherine's actions spread far beyond Millbrook. The case sparked national debates about the nature of marriage, the dangers of unconventional arrangements, and the hidden pressures of suburban life. Psychologists weighed in on the potential consequences of experiments like wife swapping, warning of the emotional toll such arrangements could take. In the years that followed, Millbrook worked to heal. Community came together, supporting the families torn apart by the tragedy. A scholarship was established in Rebecca's name at the high school where she had taught, ensuring that her passion for education lived on. But the scars remained. Maple Street, once the epitome of suburban bliss, now carried a dark history. New families moved in, drawn by the spacious homes and good schools, but they couldn't escape the whispers about what had happened there. Catherine Harper's case became a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the dangers that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most seemingly perfect lives. It served as a warning about the unpredictable consequences of toying with the foundations of marriage and family. In prison, Catherine retreated into herself. She refused visits from Michael and her children, unable to face the pain she had caused. Her days were spent in a haze of regret, reliving the moments that had led her down this dark path. James Caldwell eventually sold the brewery and moved away with Oliver, seeking a fresh start in a place where they weren't haunted by Rebecca's memory at every turn. But the pain of their loss followed them, a constant reminder of how quickly life can change. Michael Harper, after years of throwing himself into his work, finally sought therapy to deal with the trauma of his wife's actions and the dissolution of his family. Slowly, he began to rebuild his life, focusing on being there for his children and learning to trust again. The case of the Millbrook wife swap murder became the subject of true crime books and documentaries, each attempting to understand how an innocent experiment could go so terribly wrong. But for those who lived through it, no explanation could ever truly make sense of the tragedy. In the end, the case of Catherine Harper stood as a chilling reminder of the complexity of human emotions and the devastating consequences that can arise when desire turns to obsession. It was a case of love, betrayal, and the dark corners of the human heart. A tragedy that would be remembered long after the headlines faded and the cameras moved on. Quiet streets of Millbrook would never be quite the same. The sense of safety and trust that had once defined the community had been irreparably damaged. Neighbors looked at each other differently, wondering what secrets might be hiding behind closed doors. As years passed, the case of the wife swap murder became a local legend, whispered about by teenagers at slumber parties and discussed in hushed tones by new residents. It served as a grim reminder that even in the most idyllic settings, darkness can take root. The Harper and Caldwell children grew up carrying the weight of their parents' choices. Emma and Ethan Harper struggled with the stigma of being the children of a murderer, while Oliver Caldwell grappled with the loss of his mother and the disintegration of his family. In a twist of fate, Emma Harper and Oliver Caldwell reconnected years later as adults. United by their shared trauma, they formed a bond that helped both of them heal. Their friendship became a symbol of resilience, a small light emerging from the darkness of their shared past. The case also had lasting impacts on the legal system. It sparked discussions about the need for clearer laws regarding non-traditional marital arrangements and the potential legal ramifications of such experiment. Family therapists and relationship counselors often cited the Millbrook case as a cautionary tale, using it to illustrate the importance of open communication and the potential dangers of acting on impulses without considering the consequence. As the years passed, the case of the Millbrook wife swap murder continued to captivate the public imagination. True crime enthusiasts pored over the details, debating Catherine's motivations and speculating about what might have happened if different choices had been made. The case became the subject of a popular podcast series, bringing renewed attention to the tragedy and its aftermath. In prison, Catherine Harper's life took on a monotonous rhythm. She spent her days working in the prison library, finding solace in books that allowed her to escape, if only mentally, from the reality of her situation. She began writing a memoir, not for publication, but as a form of therapy, trying to understand her own actions and the series of events that had led her to this point. James Caldwell, in his new life away from Millbrook, eventually found a measure of peace. He became an advocate for victims of violent crimes, using his experience to help others navigate the painful aftermath of tragedy. Oliver, now a young man, followed in his mother's footsteps and became an English teacher, keeping Rebecca's memory alive through his passion for literature. Michael Harper's journey of healing was long and difficult. He struggled with guilt, wondering if he could have done something to prevent the tragedy. Through therapy and support groups, he slowly learned to forgive himself and focus on being the best father he could be to Emma and Ethan. He became involved in mentoring programs for at-risk youth, hoping to make a positive impact and perhaps prevent others from making the kind of choices that had torn his family apart. The community of Millbrook, too, evolved in the wake of the tragedy. The initial shock and horror gave way to a determination to heal and grow stronger. Community leaders implemented programs to foster closer relationships among neighbors, recognizing the importance of genuine connections in preventing isolation and desperation. The Maple Street homes of the Harpers and Caldwells, which had stood empty for years, were eventually sold. The new owners, aware of the property's history, worked to transform them into places of healing. The Harper House became a counseling center, offering support to families in crisis. Caldwell Home was turned into a community center, hosting events and programs aimed at bringing people together. As the 10th anniversary of Rebecca's death approached, the town of Millbrook decided to commemorate the event in a way that honored her memory while also acknowledging the painful lessons learned. They established the Rebecca Caldwell Foundation, an organization dedicated to promoting healthy relationships and providing resources for couples and families in distress. The foundation's first project was to create a memorial garden in the local park. It was a place of quiet reflection, with a small plaque that bore Rebecca's favorite quote from literature: "In the depth of winter, I finally learned that within me there lay an invincible summer." The garden became a symbol of resilience and hope, a reminder that even from the darkest tragedies, new life can grow. Emma Harper and Oliver Caldwell, whose unlikely friendship had blossomed over the years, took active roles in the foundation. They spoke at schools and community events, sharing their experiences and the lessons they had learned about forgiveness, healing, and the importance of seeking help in times of emotional distress. Their case of friendship arising from tragedy became an inspiration to many. It showed that it was possible to move beyond the sins of one's parents, to forge connections even in the most unlikely circumstances. Emma and Oliver's bond was a testament to the human capacity for resilience and growth. As for Catherine Harper, her life in prison was a constant struggle with remorse and regret. She followed news of the foundation and her children's involvement from afar, both proud of their strength and ashamed of the pain she had caused them. On the 10th anniversary of her crime, she finally agreed to an interview with a respected journalist, breaking her long silence. In the interview, Catherine spoke of her regret, her struggle with mental health issues that had gone undiagnosed and untreated, and the spiral of obsession that had led her to commit such a horrific act. Her words, broadcast nationwide, reignited discussions about mental health awareness, pressures of conforming to societal expectations, and the importance of seeking help before reaching a breaking point. The interview also had an unexpected effect on Michael Harper. Hearing Catherine speak about her struggles and regrets stirred complex emotions in him. While he could never forgive her actions, he began to see her as a deeply flawed human being rather than a monster. This shift in perspective allowed him to finally begin to let go of some of the anger he had been carrying for a decade. In the years that followed, the case of the Millbrook wife swap murder continued to evolve. It became more than just a sensational true crime tale. It became a complex narrative about human nature, the fragility of relationships, and the long-lasting impacts of our choices. Researchers in psychology and sociology studied the case, using it to explore topics ranging from the effects of social media and reality TV on perceptions of relationships, to the hidden pressures of suburban life, the potential dangers of experimenting with unconventional relationship structures without proper support and communication. The case also sparked a renewed interest in the importance of mental health support in communities. Millbrook, once known for its picture-perfect facade, became a model for other towns in implementing comprehensive mental health programs and resources. As the children of both families entered adulthood, they each found their own ways to come to terms with their past. Ethan Harper, the youngest, became a documentary filmmaker, using his medium to explore stories of redemption and second chances. His first film, a poignant look at children of incarcerated parents, won critical acclaim and helped spark a national conversation about the hidden victims of crime. Emma Harper, who had initially struggled the most with her mother's actions, found purpose in her work with the Rebecca Caldwell Foundation. She became a licensed therapist, specializing in helping families navigate crisis situations. Her personal experience gave her a unique insight and empathy that made her particularly effective in her role. Oliver Caldwell, while continuing his work as an English teacher, also became a published author. His memoir, The Other Side of the Fence, offered a raw and honest account of his journey through grief, anger, and eventual healing. The book became a bestseller, touching readers with its message of resilience and the power of forgiveness. As for James Caldwell, he found an unexpected second chance at love later in life. He met a fellow grief counselor at a conference, and their shared experiences and passion for helping others formed the basis of a deep connection. While he would always carry the memory of Rebecca with him, he found that it was possible to honor her memory while also embracing new happiness. Michael Harper, after years of focusing solely on his children and his work, also began to open himself up to the possibility of new relationships. He started dating again, approaching relationships with a new wisdom and appreciation for the complexities of human connections. Catherine Harper, still serving her life sentence, found a form of redemption in helping fellow inmates. She became involved in prison education programs, using her experience as a cautionary tale to help others understand the consequences of unchecked emotions and impulsive action. As the years turned into decades, the Millbrook case faded from national headlines, but its impact continued to ripple through the lives of all those involved. It remained a powerful reminder of how quickly life can change, the importance of mental health awareness, and the potential for both great tragedy and remarkable resilience within every community and every family. The case of the Millbrook wife swap murder became more than just a sensational crime. It became a complex tapestry of human emotions, societal pressures, and the long-term consequences of our choices. It served as a stark reminder that beneath the surface of even the most seemingly perfect lives, there can be currents of discontent and desperation. But perhaps most importantly, it also became a case of healing, the human capacity to find light even in the darkest of circumstances. The resilience shown by the Harper and Caldwell children, the way the community of Millbrook came together to support each other and grow stronger, and the ongoing efforts to use this tragedy as a catalyst for positive change, all spoke to the indomitable nature of the human spirit. As Millbrook approached the 20th anniversary of the tragedy, plans were made for a town-wide event of remembrance and reflection. The Rebecca Caldwell Foundation, now a respected national organization, planned to use the occasion to launch a new initiative focused on early intervention and support for families in crisis. The event would bring together many of the key figures from the case: Michael Harper, James Caldwell, Emma, Ethan, and Oliver, all of whom had agreed to speak about their experiences and the long journey of healing they had undergone. Even Catherine Harper, still incarcerated, was to participate via a pre-recorded video message. Her involvement was controversial, but the organizers felt it was important to present a complete picture of the tragedy and its aftermath, including the perspective of the person responsible. As the day of the event approached, there was a sense of both anticipation and apprehension in Millbrook. For many, it would be a painful reminder of a dark chapter in their town's history. For others, it represented an opportunity for closure and a chance to see how far they had come. The case of the Millbrook wife-swap murder would forever be a part of the town's history, a cautionary tale passed down through generations. But it had also become a case of resilience, the strength found in community, and of the possibility of finding meaning and purpose, even in the wake of unimaginable tragedy. In the end, the legacy of this terrible event was not just the pain it caused, but also the healing and growth it inspired. It stood as a testament to the complexity of human nature, the fragility of relationships, and the enduring power of hope and redemption. The quiet streets of Millbrook, once shattered by tragedy, had become a living testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the possibility of finding light even in the darkest of circumstances. Thank you for delving into the tragic and complex case of the Millbrook wife-swap murder. This case serves as a stark reminder of the unforeseen consequences that can arise from seemingly harmless decisions and the profound impact one event can have on an entire community. We hope this account has provided insight into the human psyche and the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable tragedy. If you found this case compelling, we invite you to explore our other true crime narratives. Each case offers a unique window into the darker aspects of human nature, as well as the strength and perseverance of those affected by these crimes. From unsolved mysteries to shocking revelations, our collection of true crime stories continues to shed light on the complexities of criminal behavior and the pursuit of justice. Stay tuned for more gripping accounts that will challenge your perceptions and leave you pondering the intricacies of the human condition.